I'm Chrissy Morgan, and welcome to another edition of History in Your Own Backyard. Today I am in Sunbury, Ohio, just north of Columbus, with Miss Becky Cornett. Thank you for being here today, Becky. Please tell us.
I'm so happy to.
Oh, that's awesome. Please tell us a little bit about what makes Sunbury remarkable.
Well, this town was platted in 1816 by the Myers brothers, but there were other settlers here before that. And so it grew as a stagecoach town, which is my particular interest, from there about 1820. It's had its ups and downs over the decades. We'll talk more about Nestle Company was a big highlight, and then they left. But what's really remarkable is how now they're a city of 5,000 as of 2021. Oh,
wow.
And that happened after a long period of, as I mentioned, kind of some decline. And then people, though, had the wherewithal to, despite some of the setbacks, they were able to relate more to Westerville and Galena and build that way in a kind of a regional presence. And keep, and we'll have, I know, film of the town square, keep the historic, what do we want to say, the historic nature of the town.
And this town was built, when is it considered established?
1816.
1816.
Yeah,
okay,
yes.
So we've got a lot of history
yes,
here
we sure
in
do.
Sunbury, but without maybe these other towns realizing
Yes.
that's what this makes this town pretty special, and they've kept it.
Yes, and their history is remarkably well documented too.
Oh, really? Oh, I love that.
It really is. I've been amazed at the wherewithal and persistence of the people decades ago and then even now that are keeping the history alive.
Well, that really tells you something about why a town should exist and what that history brings us for today.
Yes.
I know we are in the town square right now, and there's a historical marker stating this as a stagecoach town. If you don't mind telling me what a stagecoach town is and what the stagecoach era was like.
Well, about 1820 is when the stagecoach started, and it continued until 1873.
And just to start, a stagecoach is like a trailer, a covered trailer with horses in front. Am I?
Well, a carriage.
A carriage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's called a stagecoach as opposed to, I mean, the coach itself is, you could even, there's private coaches, but it's a stagecoach because it was staged along these routes and stopped at inns or places to change horses, that kind of thing, and had a specific, just no different really than a bus route today. Yeah. And what's remarkable about Sunbury is it was on two major routes. So one went from Columbus to Sandusky, and the other went from Cincinnati to Cleveland. So that's a big deal. And so I bought the Mitchell's Guide of 1839 that showed Sunbury on these two major routes for the stagecoach.
On both of those routes.
Book, yes, for the whole state. And so there were a few other towns that were on the two routes, but not many. So this is one. So the inn that's behind us, the Myers Inn, was in 1974 was put on the Register of Historic Places as the Sunbury Tavern. It's called today the Myers Inn Museum because the Myers brothers built it and ran it.
Yeah, the same people that helped found it.
But it was on the register as the Sunbury Tavern. Later, it became the Hopkins House for many years, and then as a hotel and boarding house and apartments. And then the Historical Society here, Big Walnut Historical Society, are the ones who restored it.
And during that era of the stagecoach era, there would have been stagecoaches everywhere.
Yes, and there were also other inns here. I think a total of 5.
Oh, 5 different inns around this town square.
Well, no, not on the square, but along the nearby on the routes.
Gotcha, but still.
Yes. And so this would have been really hopping with not only the stagecoaches and the passengers, but also the inns were, along with the later town hall, a community center for not only travelers, but the people in the town.
Gotcha.
And that's where they got their news and a lot of socialization. And this would have been a very busy place, also with related businesses. So next to the inn is a blacksmith shop and livery, and there would have been across the square, I've heard there was a horseshoe, a farrier, there were a lot of these names of these old...
Kind of what it would have been the auto shops,
yes.
but to help repair the
exactly.
horses, kind
yes,
of. Yeah.
Yep. And then some of the farms, and there were lots of horse farms in Delaware County and here too, would be sites where the horse teams were changed, because they were kind of running the whole time, changed every 10 to 12 miles.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah, because it took a long time to get from place to place, because the coaches, at maximum speed, and that was only later when roads were better, was like 9 miles an hour.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Really
Yep.
taking us back. Okay, so we're talking about horses in this town. Agriculture, being central Ohio, must have been a big deal back then. And tell us a little bit of how it is then and current.
So this area was as crops and livestock and horses, like most of the other part. But what was special here, and in a few other places in the county, was dairy farming.
Okay.
So the Sunbury Cooperative Creamery was the big deal, right? When the farmers decided to get together, and then they sold primarily, other dairy products, but butter was the huge thing. And so Sunbury butter became really famous. And when the railroad came, and that wasn't until 1873, then they shipped their butter in refrigerated cars all over the United States. Even to California and New York.
Wow. Back in the 1800s.
Yeah, yes. So that was, and that's a big legacy. People still are very much into, the Sunbury butter.
So the Sunbury butter still exists, and the dairy farmers?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know, because there is still some dairy farming here and in other places, but it's more specialized. So I don't think, that would be more local sales or that I know of. But it's a good question.
The farmland out now has been developed or is in the process of being developed.
There's still over 700 farms in Delaware County.
There are, okay.
Yeah, and some as big as 4,000 acres.
Wow.
But yes, there's a lot of being sold to developers and lots of new housing subdivisions coming in. And that is considered a good thing, for tax base, and that's partly why Sunbury reached the 5,000 city. To be a city, it's 5,000 people, in 2021, and continues to grow. Yeah.
You were mentioning the railroad. How has the railroad impacted Sunbury? Was it pretty significant in the day?
Yes, it was. So 1873 was pretty late because the train came to Delaware in 1851.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that's why the stagecoach stayed till 1873. The last
really
stagecoach
hung on.
Well, because that was the way to get around.
Yeah.
From place to place. So then, of course, it, like in almost all the places, once they got the railroad, then that, was the end of the other horse and buggies and all. Well, not completely, but primarily.
The beginning of change.
Yeah, very much so. And so. There were other towns here, like Condit, which is a whole story in itself. There's a lot of these remnant towns still around, and Condit's one of them. And it had the railroad, but then when that left, like when a town that my father grew up in Michigan, when we talked earlier about a bypass on roads, right?
Yeah.
So when US 131 then bypassed a small town, then all the businesses went away there. So that's true of a number of these towns that are kind of remnants around, but when the railroad left.
So the the stagecoach era was kind of lasting a little while, and when the railroad came to near Sunbury. Tell me a little bit about that time, if you could.
Yeah, so I mentioned about the refrigerated cars.
Yes.
For the butter. That was a big deal, and also for other products, because now the railroad expanded commerce a lot. But on a personal level, for people being excited about having the railroad here, I just want to read this account from Polly Whitney Horn. She's one of the historians and now curator of that museum behind us. So she wrote this about the Cleveland, Akron, and Columbus Railroad was built through Sunbury. The town gave $22,000, and this is back in the day where, you know, townspeople themselves had to voluntarily, you know, raise this money. Today we're taxed, and, you know, but that's the beginning of people being responsible for their own well-being, and land for the railroad to go through Sunbury. Galena, which is just a few miles down south, contributed $13,500. So of course it stopped there too. People gathered at the railroad stations to meet the trains, stroll around the flower beds, and visit with other residents. Now also one could ride the train to Columbus, shop, and return on the same day.
On the same day.
Yeah, so that made
So we're talking about what used to be 10 miles to the horse.
Yeah.
And now we've got...
And take all day.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and now we've got the train coming in, and they can just head to Columbus at any time.
Yeah, and to add ridership, they used to have different excursions. So you could go to different parks or events, you know, on the train, and that was encouraged.
Wow.
Yeah, and there was one account of before Polly's by a historian here who said that so that they could, when one of the first trains came through, this lady bundled her daughter who had measles in a blanket so that she could, you know, see the train come in.
Oh,
Took her down to the
that was
depot.
the big deal.
Yeah, so that was a big deal, and people, it was kind of a
And this is 22,000
entertainment.
in what year?
This, that was around, well, right in 1873. So that would be today, we could do the calculation real quick, a lot of money.
A lot of money.
Yeah, and buying power.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to bring the train here.
Yeah.
And to be able to travel it.
Yeah.
How interesting.
Yeah. Today, and this is one of the things that's remarkable about Sunbury, they did tear up the railroad bed, the railroad tracks rather, and the railroad bed now is the Sandell Legacy Trail for biking and hiking.
Oh, okay.
And then there's the Model Railroaders Club that you can go see, like they have open houses a couple times a month, and they're at the old depot right by the Legacy Trail, and it's all owned by Preservation Parks.
So, in a sense, the town is still saving money to preserve what we can. Interesting.
Yeah.
So the Sunbury Creamery was obviously a big deal to the town of Sunbury, but I believe Nestle Company had been a part of the town as well. I mean, is it true that Nescafe and Nestea were produced here?
Yes, it's a very big deal.
Okay.
So the cooperative creamery was sold to Nestle in 1919, and they were here until 1993.
And that was because of condensed, condensed milk kind of changed that process.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So partly, I mean, at first and you know, Nestle's famous for baby formula and all that, so it started with the dairy stuff. But one thing that's really important related to that is that the creamery was also famous because of they produced the very first butter cow, sculpted butter cow, at the Ohio State Fair.
Oh, really?
That was in 1903.
Like what you'd see at Easter, the little...
Yeah, only this was big. This is like life size. Yeah. And it's become a staple since then of the Ohio State Fair. And there's a dairy products building and of course, refrigerated big case.
Yes.
But the butter, I mean, people flock to see it.
Yes,
and it all started with the Sunbury Cooperative Creamery.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
So Nestle came in and...
Yeah, so Nestle came in the man, I can't remember the man's name, but he was Swiss that lived here, you know, and with the company. There's also some Nestle labs that I didn't know about that were over in Dublin that related, so development of products.
Oh.
So here is where they did produce Nestle instant tea, which became really famous. I know when I was growing up, it was a huge deal.
Yeah.
And my mother drank a lot of instant coffee, you know, and there was decaf coffee.
Right.
And so that, what's the Nescafe instant coffee?
Yes.
Yeah, that was here. This is where it was
the origins.
was produced, yeah. And it was the major employer, and there was a coffee smell here all the time. It was famous for this coffee smell. And the plant had a big coffee cup that you could see, I guess, pretty far on the top of it. So that was real famous.
Really?
Yeah, so when Nestle announced that because some of their products were no longer popular, they closed the plant. And it was a large plant too.
Interesting.
And over 30% of the tax base was lost.
Wow.
Yeah. So at the beginning, when I mentioned it's had its ups and downs here, that was definitely a down.
I would
Yeah.
say so.
Yeah. Today, some of the businesses that are on 37 out here are related to the huge Honda plant in Marysville. They produce parts for Honda. So
Gotcha.
that's a nice, solid, related
Right.
businesses. So those are some of the main manufacturing.
Gotcha.
Right.
So you go from a creamery to the Nestle company, and now we're into auto parts.
Yeah, yeah.
How times change.
Yeah, and of course there's other things, and then people that live here, just like a lot of the places, they want the small town feel, but they work in Columbus or they work in Westerville, or
Right.
you know, which is now more of a trend, right?
Yes.
Or work from home now,
Yes.
right? So, and I guess that's a big trend, that you can work from home and live in a lovely small town.
Yeah. That stayed that's just like Sunbury.
Yeah, and spend time in the historic town square.
Yeah. So here we are in the town square of Sunbury, and I noticed there's this building in the middle, which I guess is the town hall, and then there's also a statue of General William S. Rosecrans. So let's go back in the past, and if you could tell me a little bit about both of those.
Okay. Both are really important, and people are so eager to tell about General Rosecrans. His William Stark, and his nickname for years was Rosie.
Was Rosie.
Yeah, and he was a man of many talents. He wasn't born in Sunbury, but he was born in Kingston Township right by here, but they're definitely claiming him. And also there's quite a nice exhibit in the Myers Inn Museum that people should go see. Well, he was born in 1819 and died in 1898 in California.
Okay.
He moved there after the Civil War. And he was a graduate of West Point and taught there as well. And he married Elizabeth Hegman and had 5 children. One thing, I usually wouldn't talk about someone's religion, but he became a Roman Catholic in 1845, and why that's important is because his brother was the bishop of the Diocese of Columbus. And from 1868 until 1878. And in one of General Rosecrans's talents as an engineer, he helped with, I guess, improvements to the building of St. Joseph Cathedral down in Columbus, you know, for his brother.
Right.
So that's something that I only found out recently, why that was so important. He's probably best known for his service in the Civil War, and unfortunately he was relieved of his command, and now we know, because of recent research, quite unfairly, because he lost the Battle of Chickamauga, and, you know, which was a big battle of the Civil War. And he was very bitter toward General Grant from then on. And so there's quite a bit written about all this, but on the record, we can say that he really had a much more remarkable service than has ever been given credit for.
Right.
And there is,
at the end.
yeah, and there is some tarnishing of General Grant over his attitude and
Really?
trying to yeah, I guess blame things on Rosecrans, but that's for another long program. Yes.
Nice to dabble a little bit
Yes.
into that.
And some other things that are really important about Rosecrans is that, well, he lived in Cincinnati. For a while, he, I should have said this, he left the Army after he was at West Point due to his health for a while, and only rejoined for the Civil War. So between this time as a civilian, he was an engineer. And actually, while he lived in Cincinnati, he invented the first kerosene lamp with a round neck, which back then was, a kerosene lamp was a big deal, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And then he developed a more effective method of soap manufacturing, played a key role in building an oil refinery west of the Allegheny Mountains, and designed and installed one of the first complete lock and dam systems in West Virginia.
Really?
No, at the Western Virginia, I should have said.
Virginia.
Yeah, at the time, yeah. So, and then he was a member of Congress from 1881 to 1885 from California. And he moved, and now he died in California. He was actually chairman of the Military Affairs Committee in the 48th Congress. Wow. So there's kind of a lot about him.
And when was he in Sunbury?
Yeah. So he was just born here.
He was born
here. And
here.
then his family moved away some, but you know how anyone who was born somewhere, we tend to claim them.
I don't blame
you.
You
know that.
Yeah. So I can certainly understand why there's a statue of General Rosecrans in this town square.
Yeah.
Tell us a little more about the town hall.
Okay, so the town hall is still a wonderful centerpiece, as we say, of the square. It was built in 1868, and it was also added to the National Register along with the Sunbury Tavern, or what's today Myers Inn, in 1974. So the first 2 stories were built in 1868, and then the Masons added a 3rd story in 1873, and they were there for 90 years, meeting on that 3rd floor.
In the center of town.
Yeah, in the center of town. And the building was a school, village offices, jail, fire station, and then later,
at separate times?
Yeah, different, combinations of things. Yeah,
right.
And then I haven't been able to sort that out. And then at one time, later on, before the community library was built outside of town, all 3 floors were the community library occupied.
Okay.
Yeah. And then in 2002, the town hall was renovated, so now it has a lovely 1st floor community room that can be rented for events or meetings, and it's very nice. And then they also have a mayor's court.
What is a mayor's court?
Well, that's where traffic tickets and things that the mayor and magistrates handle.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever.
So still like a city office.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Okay.
Although right across the street here is where the municipal building is.
Gotcha.
Which, is modern. And
what else can you tell me about the town hall?
So I wanted to read something from one of these remarkable accounts that I found that it's very personal. And this person said, "We can imagine the thrill of the Sunburians when this place, the town hall, was new. At last a hall was big enough for lectures and plays from the outside world. The new railroad could bring lecturers and the small stock companies, meaning players that came,
Gotcha.
And played little towns. One night stands, 2, 3, or even a week with a different play each night. Uncle Tom's Cabin, 10 nights in a bar room, or East Lynne would make fascinating viewing for culture-starved Sunbury residents. The Hopkins House, which is the Myers Inn now, registers shows names of members of some of these stock companies. And then, besides professional performances, the new hall opened doors for all kinds of amateur entertainment, and musicals were staged. Adults had club meetings and programs of all types, often including a reading by some gifted person. Elocution was taught in the schools, and talented people needed practice to show their new skills." And I love that because it's really very much, I remember some of that even, I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and these things were really, really important. These places to gather, to perform,
right,
to get entertainment from all these places. And as we said, how important the railroad was. Well, it brought people that could show, oh my gosh, look at that, how professional they are.
Right, we're a real town.
wonderful.
50 years, there's nothing.
Yeah.
The town exists for 50 years, and there's not much, but now this town square has a hall to designate what Sunbury is. And there's not much to do except go to the center of town, to the town hall where all these plays are and everything else.
Very much so. And it's always had a kitchen.
It's always had a kitchen.
Always had a kitchen. So, which of course is important for today's events there.
So
but
there
they
are still
always
events here.
Oh yeah.
And the kitchen still exists.
Yes.
So what happens today? People are still coming to the center of
Very
town?
much so. And this is, I think, a testament to the town council and others. They have a 4th of July celebration. They have a farmer's market every Saturday. They have flea markets on Memorial Day and Labor Day. They have movie on the square monthly during the summer. Sunbury Sizzle and Sounds in August, and Christmas on the square. And I know I've been to the Myers Inn several times during all of these and watching from the windows. And the parade goes all around. They have constant parades, at these different, and it's really quite, you can tell people love this historic environment to conduct today's events.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so neat. Now, earlier you had mentioned that this land at one time, I mean, we're imagining way back in the past was a place for farm animals.
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I'm glad you reminded me of that. So I like to sit here and think about how the animals, all kinds of livestock, were crowded in here. And of course, there was a fence around. And they had earmarks, which I didn't even know what earmarks were before that, on the ear, so they could tell which animal belonged to which farmer.
Okay.
Yeah. That's different than earmarks in Congress, that we talk about today. And so apparently one person watched the animals while then the other farmers went around and did what they needed to do, because the farms a long time ago didn't have fences like they do today.
Gotcha.
So it was difficult.
Why would they bring animals into?
Well, because they needed to do business and long ago apparently they were trying to build their barns and all of that.
Right.
And then somebody needed to make sure the livestock didn't run away, right? Or
another
get poached
resource.
or something. Yes. And then another thing, and here we're sitting in a gazebo, right there in that intersection behind us is where livestock sales in the late 1800s were.
Wow.
A lot.
Wow.
Apparently, a lot of horses and then others, but because this was such a horse county for horse farms, and also because they needed a lot of horses for the stagecoach companies.
Right.
Yeah. So that was a big activity.
Right. So people are coming from the past with their animals and to do business in town, and people today are coming into town and enjoying.
Yeah. And there's still a lot of animals around, but of course they don't congregate in them. But sometimes they bring them for parades. And
just a bit of the past.
Yes.
What else can you tell me about Sunbury? And what makes you enjoy this town?
Yes, so part of it too are the parks that are nearby, preservation parks, and
oh yes, there's Alum Creek and
Hoover Reservoir.
The Hoover Reservoir. So what makes them significant?
So they're very well known for lots of different outdoor activities, and actually quite a birding area we have too.
Oh.
That's not known by it's not the same as like McGee Marsh up in around Lake Erie, but it's still very important, and that's because of these parks. Well, the downside of these is I guess it was in the 50s is when Hoover Reservoir was made, and that was because of damming, and also Alum Creek was dammed to make Alum Lake and then Alum Creek State Park.
Gotcha.
So the problem with it was for Alum Creek State Park, for the Alum Lake, Cheshire, which is more toward Delaware, was destroyed. People had to leave that village. And there's still a remnant around, but yes, and then their cemetery. So like even as late as the 1990s, they were finding caskets and so on in the water. And yeah, so there was, you know, some stories scuttlebutt about all that because, but people are thrilled today, and most people know nothing about this past, right? And also with Hoover, that was earlier when they did Hoover. And this was for Columbus water. These things, you know, one was flood control, and the other was to provide water to the big city of Columbus.
Gotcha.
That these things were done.
Okay.
But with Genoa Township was more affected by Hoover, and then farms were lost and homes because of that too. Not like a whole village, but and that really affected people. And you know, they still have that on the township website. Is still, you know, a little discussion of that.
Right.
But point out that everyone loves to do boating and fishing. And,
right. The park is still being used today.
Yeah. It's made a huge difference. Yeah, to the county.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Becky, for all of your information and history and just love of this town. It's really been enjoyable.
Thank you.
Again, my name is Chrissy Morgan. I'm with Becky Cornett in Sunbury, Ohio. Thank you for watching another edition of History in Your Own Backyard. Remember, travel slowly and stop often.